Good morning, everyone. It's Anifa Menon from hearthealthbrainhealth.com, encouraging healthy grieving and mindful actions. Today, my thoughts have been, or contemplative time has been, all the way from judgment and judging to guilt and shame and blame. And years ago, I had read a fantastic book called Radical Responsibility. It's by Fleet Mall, and it's fantastic. It definitely talks a lot about this blame and shame cycle. And a lot of people and a lot of human minds go through this cycle regularly until we catch ourselves. So, in this, I thought I'd give an example of someone who's judging themselves for making a decision and then not following through on it. And the simplest one that I come across regularly is people will say, I'm going to eat only this for this week. I'm going to watch either calories, or I'm going to try this diet, or I'm going to not eat this. And then they eat it or don't follow the diet or do something different than what the plan is. And then suddenly they're judging themselves and saying, I said I was going to do this, and I am so awful that I can't stick to this direction. And I just stopped doing everything. And so this is a cycle that, the judgment, then there's the blaming, and then there's the shaming about, oh, that makes me not good, right? That sort of idea. So I came across this quote by Wayne Dyer, which I really like. And it says, judging a person does not define who they are, it defines who you are. Judging a person does not define who they are, it defines who you are. So, in this, if I judge even myself in this sort of way that I said I was going to do this, and if I didn't do it, I'm a bad person. I'm going to look at from that same perspective towards anyone else too, right? So, if I see someone saying that they're going to do something and they don't do it, and I judge them, that makes you a bad person. It's the same way I'm speaking to myself. And it's really important that we understand this. Now, if I can look at myself and say, it's okay. You followed this diet plan for 2 days and you didn't think you'd get through one day. So that's good. Or I'm going to start again tomorrow, right? So a different way of looking at it. So it's a much more forgiving space. So I also came across another quotation, which I thought was really fantastic, so that we can understand the effect of the emotion or the feeling of shame. Okay, so this quotation is by Christian Northrup, and this quotation says, shame is, hands down, the most uncomfortable feeling. And because it produces continuous amount of inflammatory chemicals in the body, it is also a health risk. So I'll read that again. Shame is, hands down, the most uncomfortable feeling. And because it produces continuous amounts of inflammatory chemicals in the body, it is also a health risk. So we can imagine a child comes home late from going over to a friend's place, and we might blame the child for, you were supposed to be here to do this. And then we might shame the child of, you're always like this. And then this is the continuous inflammatory chemicals beginning in that child, right? And we do this to ourselves, we do it to others, and it starts with judgment. I think you should be back at the time that you said you were going to be, and I have judgment about this. I think you should eat the nutrition that you said you were going to eat. And so, whether it's for myself or someone else, it starts, that judgment is there, and then we put on the blame, and then that puts in the shame, and then that creates guilt, and guilt and shame are very closely related. And I thought I just wanted to make sure that we are focusing on how we are affecting ourselves, either with our speaking to ourselves, which is where we speak the most, or speaking with others, which is a close reflection of how we speak to ourselves too. And recognizing that we're doing this to ourselves and to others takes a little bit of conscious decision to take responsibility for what comes out of our mouth or what comes through our mind, because what we're allowing inflammation in these times. The higher vibrational energies would be things like forgiveness, compassion, empathy. All of those things will bring a much more soothing experience to our experience and the experience of people around us, whether we know them or not, right? So again, I don't even have to know someone to think that, wow, that person just stole this. I just saw them steal this food from that grocery store, and I can automatically jump to judgment. Now I can think, I wonder what they're going through to need to steal, right? So I can go there and now move myself into a less inflammatory space for myself and for the energy that I'm putting out into the world. And then I might discover that this person has a starving child at home that they're trying to feed, right? Maybe the child is dying and this is the child they're trying to feed. Now, again, it doesn't make the behavior of stealing correct, but it does bring in compassion and it takes away judgment, right? So, all of that of being mindfully aware of what we're thinking, speaking, and how we're acting in our day to day lives is hugely beneficial. So then I came across this beautiful quotation that seemed to summarize this sort of idea. It's by an author named Lecrae, and this quotation says, "Guilt says you failed. Shame says you're a failure. Grace says your failures are forgiven." I would always like to lean towards grace. And of course, this is not so easy to do the closer to home things hit, right? So if we're looking at ourselves, oftentimes, if we're in a cycle of blame and shame or even guilt, all of these things, we're not so forgiving for ourselves. And I will say we're even quicker to be less forgiving of others. And I came across a beautiful quote that I'd like to end with. And in this time, before I share that quotation with you, I will say take a minute to see, how do you speak to yourself? Do you blame yourself for things, decisions you've made, actions you've taken, things you've said? And then are you shameful of it inside or outside? And then are you accusing others in a way that is shameful or blaming? And then are you recognizing that this is creating inflammation? So think of one experience where you realize, wow, this is how I speak to myself about this. It could be about your nutrition. It could be about your exercise. It could be about your sleep pattern. Maybe you go to sleep very, very late. Maybe it's you don't wake up early enough. All of these things. Maybe you don't clean your house as much as you'd like to, right? So all of these things, and how do we speak to ourselves in those times? Find one and see if you can shift that thinking. And so I came across this quotation by William Shakespeare, which I think is beautiful. It says, "Live in thy shame, but die not with shame in thee." Live in thy shame, but die not with shame in thee. And I'd go one step further. Recognize an area of shame or blame or guilt, modify it, and don't die with shame in thee. I hope you have a fantastic day ahead, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Remember to transform your mind to transform your life. Have a great day, everyone.